India. So with that, over to Mr. Kamal.
Thank you very much, Nidhi. Thank you so much. And I welcome all of you once again to Thai Global Summit 2020. And today's subject or the sector on which we're going to talk is tourism sector on road to recovery of the travel and tourism in public and private sector. Okay, so on public side, we are having Gloria, Guevara, and Suman, Billa from international organizations, and from private sector we have Shoba, Mohan, and Ritesh, Agarwal. And as a moderator, I also represent government of India, Minister of Tourism. Now, ladies and gentlemen, as whatever the reports that we have been seeing, particularly the reports from European Commission and Joint Research Center and World Travel Tourism Council, the projections are likely that by the end of this year, we are going to have job loss of 197 millions. Already we have lost 142.6 million. That is almost all 43% of the job industry globally. And if you talk about the revenue side, already we have lost 3.8 trillion in the tourism sector globally, and it is expected or it is projected that we are going to lose almost all 5.5 trillion. And you talk about the international arrivals, it is almost all minus 65% already by end of November, which includes 71% in Asia Pacific and 76% of international arrivals reduction in South Africa. If you check about domestic, we have less than 33% globally, and which includes 31% in Asia Pacific and 33% in South Africa. In terms of GDP, all of us know this is the most vibrant and dynamic sector compared to other sectors. In Australia, the GDP, the total economy of Australia, almost 10.8% is coming from tourism sector. India 6.8%, Japan 7%, Maldives 56.6%, and Thailand 19.7%, Mauritius 18.8%. If you see the international commitments and the analysis of G20 tourism ministers and G20 extraordinary leader statement, G20 tourism minister statement, G20 finance ministers action plan, all of them are saying that there is going to be a paradigm shift in the thinking and the growth of tourism sector alone. While every sector is talking about revival, tourism sector is the only sector which is talking about the survival. Now, with this, I would like to have the ball set rolling for the discussion by inviting Gloria Guevara, who is the CEO, World Travel Tourism Council. We are glad to have her. She was also the Minister for Tourism with full responsibility of Mexican Tourism Board, and Gloria has been special advisor on government affairs to Harvard University and had a part of the future of the Travel, Tourism and Aviation Global Agenda Council for the World Economic Forum. So I welcome Gloria. We would like to hear from you on road to recovery of the travel and tourism in the public and private sector post COVID-19. For a global scenario. Welcome to Gloria.
Thank you, Kamal. Good morning, good afternoon. Greetings from London. It is an honor and a pleasure to be with all of you today and also to share this important event with so distinguished guests. Let me share with you our view from WTTC and who's WTTC. The World Travel and Tourism Council was created 30 years ago. We represent the global private sector. Our members are presidents and CEOs of the organizations that define the strategy and the future for travel and tourism. We have very important members. We're sharing with one today from Oyo, Ritesh, but we also have Overoy, for instance, Tash, and several other members. Krishna Seta currently is the CEO, is the chairman, I'm sorry, that reports the CEO too. And 30% of our members are in Asia, 30% in Europe, 30% in America, and 10% in the rest of the world. Very important here, we represent every single industry from airlines, airports, hotels, cruises, destinations, and tour operators. And the goal of this organization is to speak with one voice. We are united, we work together, and we speak to governments with one voice. For 30 years, we have been doing that. And not only that, we have done a lot of research. This is our numbers from 2019. You can go to our website. We have 30 years of data in 185 countries around the world. And that's how we know the importance of travel and tourism. In 2019, as you can see here, travel and tourism contributed to 10% of the global GDP, very important sector. If you see the chart below, you will see the growth of the economy and the growth of travel and tourism. Travel and tourism for the last 9 years has outpaced the growth of the economy. And of course, 2019 was not the exception, where we grew 3.5 versus 2.5, that's 40% more. To give you a context, India grew 50% more. Actually, it was almost 5%, 4.9% GDP. We look at GDP because it includes domestic and international. The contribution of our sector also globally is 330 million jobs, which is 1 in 10. But the most relevant number here that I always like to highlight is that when you look at all the industries, all the sectors around the world, and the jobs that the new jobs in the last 5 years, every single year, 1 in 4 new jobs were created in our sector. So this is the best sector to create jobs and the best partner that the governments can have for growth, to reduce poverty, and to bring prosperity. You also have here the mix between international and domestic, and of course, business and leisure. Now, as Kamal mentioned, this has been an unprecedented situation. We quantify the impact of COVID. At the beginning, it was 50 million, then 100. As of now, 143 million jobs globally have been impacted. We estimated that by the end of the year, that number was going to be 197. That has been reduced recently to 174 because we have seen some domestic recovery in some markets, such as China, Japan, and others. Now, if you look at these numbers, also the impact in Spain is significant, $3.8 trillion or 3,800 billion. But look at the bottom. Domestic is down 33%, but international is down 65%. And that's when we have the biggest challenge. How do we resume international travel? Because still a lot of countries are closed. And this is the significant impact to the economy globally, because as I say, it's 10% of the global economy, and also to a lot of jobs, unfortunately. Now, besides doing economic impact reports and measuring the contribution for travel and tourism globally and the jobs, we also analyze the past. We do a lot of research at WTTC here in London and around the world. And one of the things that has been our priority is to look at different crises. And we analyzed 90 different situations, for instance, in the last 20 years. And a year ago, we released a report where we look at these different type of crises that have impacted our sector. And there are 4 groups, basically, from political instability, outbreaks like the one that we're living, natural disasters, or security situations. And we look at the timeframes to recovery. Very interesting. When we issued this report, it was very clear that political instability was like what we call the mother of all crises, that takes minimum 10 months and 22 in average months to recover. But the second worst, as you can see here, was the outbreaks. Now, what we want to make sure is that we learn from the past and we don't make the same mistakes that we made in the past. Here, there are 3 situations that I want to highlight. The first one is 9/11. 9/11 took us years to recover. Why was that? A couple of reasons. Was the different protocols in place and the lack of coordination, unfortunately, among countries. Then we look at the financial crisis. In that situation, we recovered pretty fast because we had an amazing coordination international with the public-private sector, and we knew exactly what was going to happen and by when. And then when we look at other outbreaks such as SARS, MERS, and Ebola, what can we learn? We were able to travel without a vaccine after these outbreaks or in the middle of these outbreaks because we were able to isolate people. So if you look at in the next chart, you will see the impact. Let me just tell you really quick and walk you through this. Top left is the world, the last 20 years. The white line is the economy in the world. The green line is travel and tourism. The blue bars are jobs. As you can see there are 2 situations that have impacted our sector the most. As I say before, 9/11, it was a U-shaped recovery. The financial crisis, as you can see, was a V-shaped recovery. We recovered in 18 months globally. Why was that? 9/11, we had different protocols. For instance, screening in airports, it was different. Every country came up with their own. We didn't have this ideal coordination, public and private. We need to make sure that we avoid that this time. And we have a same experience for the traveler. Because even before COVID, when you travel around the world in the different airports, the screening is still a little bit different. In some places, they ask you to remove shoes. In some places, your phone. In some places, your computer. In some places, everything. So those protocols created a lot of uncertainty, and it took us longer to rebuild trust from the traveler. Now, if you look at the top right, you will see that's the G20. India is part of the G20. It's very influential, of course. And whatever happens in the G20 happens exactly in the world. It's a mirror, as you can see there. Now, look at the bottom right, please. That is China. That's an outbreak that they had, the SARS outbreak in 2003. Despite that there was not a vaccine, look at the recovery. They recovered pretty fast. And not only that, their growth was impressive the following years. And that's what we believe we can achieve this time. Yes, COVID is different. We have a lot of asymptomatics, but if we do it right, if we work together, we can recover faster. And that's what I celebrate events like these, because these are helping us to communicate more and be aligned. So this is excellent for the organizers as we work together to achieve that. Now, based on the analysis from the past experiences, we came up with 4 principles. And these 4 principles are crucial for the recovery. And let me just highlight, in every single document that you find for WTTC, since April, we have been talking about these 4 principles. The first one is the need for international public and private coordinated approach. Whenever is the right time for countries to reopen borders, they need to work with the private sector. We need to do it together. We need to try to remove quarantines, and we need to understand the impact. This perhaps has been the greatest challenge on this outbreak that we are living, this pandemic around the world. We haven't seen this coordination, unfortunately. We haven't seen enough sharing practices around the world. And of course, that has had a significant impact, not only in jobs, but in lives and livelihoods. We have seen lately some good examples in the UK and the EU with the business traveler to exempt, for instance, quarantines, but the quarantines are not helping. We believe that testing is the best model and just isolate the people infected, which takes me to the second point. The second point is the seamless traveler experience. We have come a long way. After 19 years of 9/11, the experience was changed. We use biometrics. And we believe that there's a before and after the vaccine. And when I'm saying before and after the vaccine, it's a vaccine widely available and spread. As you saw the news probably yesterday, the first person to be vaccinated was here in London, but still we have a long way to go. So we believe that if we include testing as a component of the travel experience, we can do testing for some markets, for some countries, especially if you're traveling from a low risk to a high risk country, and do tests. And if you're tested positive, you're not allowed to board a plane. And in that case, just people that tested negative will be allowed to board planes. And in that case, also we can isolate infected people, kind of what we did in the outbreak, for instance, in 2003 and others. Now, that test has to be low cost, has to be fast, and has to have high levels of efficacy and efficiency. That's what we have seen already in some markets in Europe, in some markets in Asia, in the US, for instance. If you travel from the US to Hawaii, they'll offer a test instead of a quarantine. And these tests will replace the quarantines. But it's very important to have an international testing protocol. And this has been a challenge as well, as most of the testings has been on arrival and not on departure. And we need to have it on departure and have the other country to accept the results of the test that is done on departure. Third,
5 more minutes, Gloria.
Yes.
5 more minutes.
The protocols is very important because the protocols are going to help us to recover faster. And in this case, I will elaborate more with details. And of course, to continue having the support from the government. So if we move to the next slide, very quick, these are the protocols that we implemented in the private sector. Our hotels offer rooms to doctors and nurses in the middle of COVID, and they were able to maintain those premises COVID-free. And that's how we, the private sector, came up with the safe travel protocols. In the next slide, you will see all the destinations that have received a recognition called Safe Travels from WTTC in more than 200 destinations or countries around the world, because their protocols are at the same level than the global private sector. Basically, if you visit a hotel in London, Spain, or South Africa, they will offer the same experience to the traveler, which means that we can, at the end of the day, rebuild that trust from the traveler faster. That is key, and that's something that I would suggest you should concentrate in. That the experience has to be the same. If we say do wear a mask, have that physical distance, have the hand sanitizer available everywhere, that needs to be consistent. Touchless applications, that needs to be consistent. Next slide, we have basically what we propose. We made history in October 7. India was part of that, of course, where we presented in the G20 a plan to recover 100 million jobs, a plan that includes 12 commitments from the private sector and 12 things that we need from governments. The focus and the priority is to resume international travel. Whatever we can do to resume international travel in terms of international testing protocols, modify the quarantines, is the most important. Now, last but slide, where I want to make some recommendations to the audience. What is that future of travel for everyone watching here? I think we need to look, and there's a report that you can download from our website. You need to look at the demand. The demand has changed. People are booking short term. So before we were planning with 6 months in advance, now with 2 weeks in advance. Families, how they are traveling. We see some demographics that they are traveling, wearing the mask and following the protocols. If you can help us with testimonials, if you can help with those solutions, that would, of course, be significant, important. Protocols, make sure that we all do our part and implement the same protocols and support what are the mandates from the government, the local government, and of course these global protocols, so that we all can contribute to stop the spread while we learn to coexist with this virus in a safe way. Innovation, the digital agenda and the sustainable agenda has been accelerated. A lot of applications for contact tracing, but the digital agenda is very important. We need to be prepared for the growth that is coming. We need to be ready for that digitalization that we have seen. A lot of innovation, new solutions to help us. A lot of those are staying even after COVID. And of course, the sustainability agenda, solutions where we are implementing green energy, waste, plastic, different things to support the agenda for sustainability, as this has been accelerated as well. And you will see a lot of new solutions and discussions coming, because the traveler is going to be demanding more that after COVID. And this is one thing that the leaders are working on that. So once again, I want to thank you for inviting me. Hopefully this was helpful. All this information is in our website. And this is also public. And thank you for hosting us, doing this event, and the more important, coordinating that we will be recovering. There's going to be growth, but we have to be ready to capture the growth and maximize the opportunity. Thank you.
Oh, thank you very much, Gloria. That is really and very, very informative regarding whatever the private sector is contributing for the revival of tourism sector. Most of the governments across the globe, they are giving financial and non-financial assistance support. If you see Austria is coming out, has already come out with 100% fixed cost grants as it's a tourism package. And if you see Australia, Japan, Sweden, and UK, something called unsecured loan. So loans are given disbursed without any securities. Canada, Hungary, New Zealand, Poland, Portugal, they are giving something called debt forgiveness. I think they're waiving off all the loans in the tourism sector players. And Portugal already announced 1.7 billion euros as a package. And USA, which is the 2.2 trillion funding was announced, and out of which 25 billion is going to airlines industry alone. If you speak about India, under the slogan called Atmanirbhar Bharat, almost all $40 billion has already been earmarked for the next in the phased manner through banking system to go to help MSME sector in the country. And UK has reduced the VAT rates from 20% to 5%. So like financial incentives are also given to this sector. To speak more about this, I invite Mr. Suman Billa, who is a senior officer from India with 25 years of experience, now who is posted as Director, Technical Cooperation and Silk Road Development, UNWTO. He is playing a very significant role in the promotion of responsible, sustainable and universally accessible tourism, who has enormous experience in India as Joint Secretary in the Ministry of Government of India and also as Secretary Kerala Tourism. I welcome Mr. Suman Billa. Over to Suman.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rao, and thank you, Gloria, for framing out the numbers so well, so I don't have to, cover that part of the thing. So what I will try to do in the time that I have is I will try to cover three themes. The first will be what should the governments be doing? The second is what should the businesses be doing? And the third is this process of creative destruction that the pandemic has brought on, and then some clues about how to handle that. So as Gloria had covered in her presentation, the year 2020 has pretty much been a washout in terms of business. But now that we have successful trials of the vaccines which have been reported in the past few weeks, we see that this is perhaps the light at the end of the tunnel, and then this is the time for us to start looking at getting back to where we were originally. So essentially, even though we have a vaccine, I don't think it's going to be an overnight change, because between vaccine availability and between vaccine affordability and the humongous effort that will be required in deployment of logistics for getting everybody vaccinated, it is going to take time. And I think that is something we should be comfortable with. The second is that the way the pandemic has impacted the world, and especially the tourism sector, it is not going to be the same again as it was before the pandemic. So which means that in the immediate term, we are also going to have to contend with three elements that are holding us back today. The first is that travel restrictions are there in place and they are likely to continue for some more time. The second is that slow virus containment that several countries are going through, and that's perhaps the evidence that we are seeing. So we will face that situation for some time. And the third is that low consumer confidence, and that's going to also stay for some time. So essentially, that is going to be the scenario for some time, till the time we step up into a COVID-free world, or a world in which COVID has been managed because of the vaccine. So let's look at what the government should be doing. I think the first thing that the government should do is to now kickstart revival and stimulus packages. Till this time, what most of the governments have been doing is putting money in the hands of people who have lost their jobs or in businesses who are in dire straits. Now governments need to take an entrepreneurial position to see as to how they can kickstart their tourism sectors and ensure that they are able to reach back to their optimum levels in the shortest possible time. So one of the things that we have seen in India is the LTC advance, which has been announced by the government to ensure that the demand side is kick-started. We've also seen in Japan where 50% of the cost of domestic travel is being refunded by the government. So these are elements that we require now, how to kickstart demand and how to ensure that we are able to reach our optimum levels in the quickest possible way. The second thing is, how do we have coordinated health gatekeeping? Health gatekeeping is very important, and Gloria has also mentioned this, but it is the element that is missing most now is that we are not coordinating our efforts, which means that every country has its own protocol, and then this keeps changing by the hour, by the day. And this is a problem not just at the international level, this is a problem that we also see amongst the states in India. And we have to make a coordinated approach here to ensure that we introduce that element of predictability for travel for those who want to go on a tour now. Now that the vaccines are in, the other day the CEO of Qantas has said that they are looking at a system where they will only allow people to fly if they have a vaccine certificate. And I think that is perhaps the future that we may be going towards, because if we assume that a person who is vaccinated has little chance of getting infected and an equally small chance of spreading it to others, that's perhaps the way where we are going to go, but that will take some time. The third element that government should do is to have strong hygiene and safety protocols, which means that at key destinations, wherever a traveler starts, right from the airport down to the hotels, to the restaurants, to the sites where he is going to, even down to the public washrooms that they are going to be using. We need to ensure that there are protocols. Now, it's not important, it's not enough if we just have the protocols. We also need to ensure that they are followed robustly, and more importantly, that they are communicated well so that they reassure the traveler. As the saying goes, it's not enough to kill the virus, it's equally important to kill the anxiety in the traveler. WTTC has a way of certifying destinations in this framework, and I think we need to look at branding and some possibilities like that to ensure that we are able to reassure travelers. The fourth element is that governments need to look at having a focused and a controlled restart, because too often there is the temptation to go into it with too much speed, and then if you have to retrace your steps, the cost is punitive in terms of loss of consumer confidence. I think it is important that governments pick key destinations, use their resources wisely, do whatever it takes, work backwards to ensure that they make a success out of it. And once they have made a success, it is easy to replicate it and ramp it up across other destinations. So I think it's very important that governments cut their coat according to the cloth that they have. The fifth element is synergy with aviation, because today most of the travel is happening by road, and people are driving up to destinations where they like. But we all know that if the numbers have to start moving up, if we have to move the needle, we will need to get the airlines into play. And if there is any other sector which has been equally affected, as badly affected as tourism, I think it's the aviation sector. And there has never been a time than now for us to build this strong synergy with the aviation sector to ensure that both of us survive. And I think government should create this platform for the private sector, for the tourism industry and the aviation to come together. Amongst the destinations that we expect to recover the fastest are the Middle Eastern destinations, because they have a very strong synergy between their aviation sector and with the tourism industry. And the advantage that it affords them is that they're able to bundle together the cost of the airfare, of the hotels, of the sites. So essentially it is bringing in that element of predictability, and it is de-risking the travel for future consumers. The sixth idea is that sustainability and responsibility. And I think that one of the things that the pandemic has strongly brought about is the awareness about sustainability and responsibility, and it is changing consumer preferences. And government policies should also follow to reflect that. So we will be seeing a lot of destinations moving towards zero carbon footprints, a lot of establishments moving towards zero food miles. We're going to be looking at factoring in environmental costs beyond the economic costs. So I think these are some paradigms that are going to be kicking in. And I think the government should use this as an opportunity to see as to how we can have a more sustainable paradigm for the tourism sector. And the last thing I couldn't emphasize more is the public-private partnership, because I could not say that there has never been a time more important than this, when PPP needs to kick in strongly, because resources are very limited on both sides, on the governments and on the businesses. And I think we need to get together and brainstorm together and come up with a cogent plan to maximize the revenues that the amount of money that we have to yield the optimum results. Now, let me talk a little bit about what the businesses should be doing. We have seen over the past year some consolidation happening, because as businesses go belly up, there have been those with cash reserves who have been picking them up. So that trend has been seen. But now that the end is in sight with the vaccines having come out, I think we are going to see credit lines being opened up cautiously but surely. And banks, as we understand, and with those whom we interact now, are looking at strong business plans with immediate cash flows. They need cash flows in the near time. So I think we need to have, as businesses adapt themselves, we need to have business plans which are not only strong and robust, but you also ensure that you're able to generate cash flows in the short term so that your head is above the water. The second thing that businesses should do very strongly is that you will have to draw the consumers out of their comfort zone, because today it requires a determined traveler to take a holiday. Considering the health risks and where people need to go. And I think businesses need to be able to come out with experiences that are so compelling that they're able to draw them out of their comfort zone. The third, and I think very important, is to inspire trust. because when people travel, they're going to be looking at where they're going to be staying and what is the confidence that the business inspires so that they don't fall sick when they actually travel. So I think you need to inspire that confidence, and as we say that today, trust is the new currency, and I think that is something that we need to use all over in all of our activities. And the fourth thing is fair business arrangements, because we need to ensure that we also protect consumer interests. If somebody has made a booking but is unable to travel, even if you're not able to refund the money, give him a voucher that he can use for later or whatever, but you need to inspire that confidence amongst the consumer, because today many people are not able to travel simply because of health restrictions that the governments have placed or because the airlines are cancelled. So I think we need to take that into Now, let me spend a little time on exploring the theme of creative destruction that we are likely to see. As I've said that the consumer preferences are changing, and then the government policies are also moving towards, facilitating this paradigmatic change. So essentially what this means is that tourism sector going forward is going to be looking more and more at meaningful experiences, at holistic, at authentic experiences. So I think the game is going to be changing. And I think for businesses which operate on high volume and low margin businesses, they're going to be coming under stress because the consumer preferences and the situation is changing that. So essentially, if I have to put it from a consumer paradigm on what it is that the consumer is going to be looking at, I think his conundrum is going to be how to get the maximum experience at the lowest level of risk. And I think if businesses understand this, how do we de-risk the person and give him the best experience possible? I think that is where the road is going to lead you. So it essentially means that there is a tremendous opportunity. It opens up a tremendous opportunity for innovation, essentially at two levels. The first is in reimagining the process itself in terms of technology. There could be several applications which we can do to ensure that that the process itself is safeguarded. But the second, I'll just give me a minute. The second is in creating extraordinary experiences, which could be bundling together the cost, which could essentially be about. It could be about creative industry. It could be a culinary experience that you generate in the place where the person is. So these are the elements that we will look around. It could be around fashion. It could be around films. So these will be non-linear experiences that we should be looking at. So essentially what the government should do is to facilitate this process, because change is bound to happen, but ensure that there is a level playing field so that nobody is penalized. So essentially I think governments, to sum up, the government should take an entrepreneurial position and rebuild the tourism sector on a much firmer footing than what it was before. The businesses should see it as an opportunity to rejig their business and emerge much stronger than earlier. And especially for startups, there has never been a time than now where which has opened up a huge space for them to come out and thrive. Thank you very much. I'm sorry I probably overstepped my time.
That's okay. Thank you so much, Suman. As you rightly said, trust is the new currency. Now, many countries in many hotel industries also, they are trying to instill this trust with many slogans. For example, Four Seasons Hotel has entered into an agreement with John Hopkins hospitals to implement and execute health protocols. Marriott Hotel with travel with confidence. That's a slogan that they've given to implement the WHO guidelines, where the electrostatic sprayers they're using sanitizing stuff, which sanitizes surfaces. ITC also has come up with the slogan that we assure in collaboration with the disinfection experts. ITDC also has entered into an agreement with All India Institute of Medical Sciences. So in every country, in every hotel is trying to get in touch with the health experts, and disinfection experts. So with this, whether we are really going to have the revival, how quickly we are going to have this revival in the hotel industry. To speak about this, I call upon Ritesh Agarwal, who is the founder and CEO of Oyo Rooms, and also he became the world's second youngest billionaire of this year. Agarwal is also a recipient of the Business World Young Entrepreneur Award, and many credentials to himself. He launched his first startup at the age of 17. He has achieved, I mean, significantly in tourism sector. I call upon Ritesh Agarwal to speak on.
Thank you so much, Mr. Rao, and you're very generous. But I'm also lucky that I had the good opportunity to build a business in the travel and tourism segment, and what I call is the one of the best periods of building a tourism or a travel business starting out of India. So I'm very lucky about that, and hoping that we can continue making substantial difference in the times to come. A lot has been spoken before by both Gloria as well as Mr. Billa. I think I will try and make sure that I try and focus a lot more on what we are seeing in the accommodation specific ecosystem, which is one level deeper, which hopefully will be valuable for our friends here. And instead of trying to give you a whole backstory, I will try and give you a quick one-liner introduction about OYO. I'm hoping that a lot of you have known or heard about us, but I'll still try and explain this in one line. Our business primarily is serving small hotel owners and holiday home owners, working with them by providing our technology, revenue management suite, branding, and so on, and helping them generate more occupancy as an outcome. Globally, we partner over 43,000 hotels and over 100,000 holiday home owners in terms of making sure that we generate more value for them. But all of that and the excitement that came along came to a screeching halt as COVID hit our industry, and the impact was something that not just in my career, but I can tell that a lot of veterans in their careers have not seen. So in the beginning, the first time we saw COVID impact our industry, starting in China, where essentially I remember that it felt like it would be a short-term challenge, but very quickly in a couple of months after January, by I think March or so, it started becoming a large global impact. And to begin with, I think if you look at various industry reports, one of them that we track very constantly is the STR reports, what a lot of our friends in the US call as the STAR reports. They have consistently seen that, early on in the year, the RevPARs dropped by upwards of 60 to 80%, depending on which part of the world you were dealing with. So there was substantial impact on our industry, and like Mr. Rao mentioned earlier, the impact in our industry was probably greater than most other industries around us. And this was due to two reasons. One, consumers were worried about being able to travel, which Mr. Billa also mentioned about why trust is so critical. But that was coupled by government restrictions, which were quite severe, and probably for the right reasons, in order to ensure that the spread of the virus can be contained. But at the same time, that did have a substantial impact in terms of consumer travel. For us here at OYO, and frankly for any other hotel player, this was an impact which frankly, we didn't expect in the worst of our times. But at the same time, we had to respond to a crisis, which brought an upwards of 66% plus drop in terms of our gross margin dollars, especially at a time where our previous two fiscals, we were growing triple-digit percentages on an annual basis. So growing from there to a sudden fall to 66% plus in a month is a huge hit, not just for us, but frankly, every other hotel company. So we had to respond with the standard crisis playbook, combined with one word which became actually the most important. So on a standard, whenever you have crisis, companies react with cash and cost. But because it was a pandemic, we had to react with something ahead of both of these, which was care. Care for our employees, because a lot of them were actually at the hotels, serving frontliners, serving travelers, and so on. Care for people who were consumers coming in and staying at our hotels. Care for frontliners who were choosing to stay at accommodations after they came back from serving people, because they didn't want to take the virus, if there was any, to their little one back home. So the first 3 to 4 months were quite a bit of effort. And at that point of time, like Mr. Rao mentioned, I think our reaction was just resilience. That is, see through this crisis was the single biggest focus in the quarter one. We readjusted in terms of our consumer and partner services, including, for instance, partnering Unilever globally for ensuring that we brought the right quality of consistency of experience for our users. And we saw in whichever hotel we gave the sanitized stay tag, our RevPARs there were actually 35% higher than the hotels which did not have it. So it demonstrated very clearly, in fact, I started getting a lot of emails saying, can I get the Lifebuoy Oyo signage outside my hotel rather than just the Oyo signage? So there was a clear response of consumer and partners to the care. On top of that, Oyo also opened in the US, Philippines, Indonesia, India. It was lauded by the White House and various leaders across the world. We were among the earliest chains which went out and said we will provide free room nights in collaboration with our hotel owners for frontliners. And stories then have truly touched my heart. There was a story of one of the AIMS doctors who was living in his community housing society, where he himself, his wife, children, and the little dog were asked to leave the society because people in the community thought that he would bring the virus along with him. And the same day, we worked with AIMS to make sure that the doctor, the kids, and the little dog all were at an Oyo home. The doctor saved at least 60 lives, I am told, after that. So stories like these from every part of the world have made me feel like the hotel industry, while has of course done its bit, I actually feel that people from the hotel industry, our front office managers, our housekeeping people have been no less than frontliners themselves in fighting the crisis. And at least we've tried to celebrate their efforts in every manner possible that way. And happy to share that we've served this with 100,000 plus frontliner doctors and medical professionals, including the Vande Bharat mission, which was the world's largest repatriation mission. We were very happy to be one of the hotel partners serving it, like Mr. Rao's hotels and so many others across our country. I think without taking a lot of time, I want to talk about two other topics. I think one is in the form of saying a lot of tough decisions were taken. Both Gloria and Suman have talked about specifically the impact of jobs. And that's an area where in my career, probably one of the toughest decisions I had to take was also furloughing some of our best talent across the world in the middle of COVID. And the hardest decision,
2 more minutes. 2 more minutes.
Sure, sir. That was probably one of the hardest decisions I had to take, but we tried to do it in a manner that was as empathetic as possible. It's not like, it was one bad decision over other. You had to take the least bad decision. So we tried to do it by enabling team members receive benefits, ownership, and so on. And for this, I was very inspired by Arnie's video. Arnie is the CEO of Marriott, who did a fantastic job. I will try to end with two things: future of travel and how the world is looking like today. In the future, I believe that data science and AI are going to be more important than ever before. Consumers will book hotels a lot more by digital mediums than that of physical mediums. So I believe personalization of choices. Sometimes consumers may want to go to sanctuaries, some customers may want to go to mountains, some customers may want to go as a small and medium business for travel. Personalization, choice of accommodation, loyalty, pricing, content, all of these will become extremely critical to be designed at a consumer level. And I think that's why data science and AI will be very critical. Small hotels and holiday homes will be the big gainer. We have seen countries like that of Denmark saw 99% occupancy in the peak of COVID for holiday homes versus hotels, which are actually losing occupancy in the peak of the COVID because consumers are choosing places where they can self-isolate, get more space for themselves, and spend time with family as well. We feel that all channels, including that of online, digital, consumer coming in through referral, walk-ins, every channel will be more critical. Now, no more hotels can say there is one channel and we will win with just that. And last but not the least, brand will be more critical than ever before. Consumer trust for the brand will allow people to choose one hotel versus other. Even in the middle of the COVID, we've been signing 35, 40,000 rooms a month because independent hotels are saying they need some brand that they can trust with. Domestic travel is the other big swing. We are seeing last year 50% of our customers in Denmark were Danes, this year 90%. Last year we saw Belgians were primarily traveling to France. We are seeing that change with people staying in their own countries. Or for instance, people from France traveling to Spain is becoming a lot more local. This, in my view, will be a one-term direction. Last but not the least, I think we are seeing business recovery across the world. In India, we are seeing our occupancy come back to around 45% of pre-COVID levels. In the US, in the budget hotel segment, the RevPAR is almost back to pre-COVID levels because of substantial amount of domestic travel coming up in South and the Southeast, where we are very largely exposed. Southeast Asia is coming back very quickly, and similarly in Europe. My hope is, like we discussed in the beginning, travel will absolutely come back with a bang. Human is a social animal. We will not live in our private homes forever. We will want to get out, and I'm listening from customers that they all are itching to go out and travel. My hope is the hotel industry will learn what customers want and will ride the wave of the next generation of travel, because travel is not going to be the same again, regardless of the size of recovery in the times to come. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you very much, Ritesh. You have really touched upon almost all the points which hotel industry is now facing as major challenge. In fact, I wanted to respond to you in a big way, but because of the paucity of time, I call upon Shoba Mohan to speak next. Shoba Mohan is founder partner of Rare India Company Limited, and she is this is a company which promotes conservation, luxury, and community-based tourism with sustainability. She is also on the board of Responsible Tourism Society of India and also Transformation Travel Council USA. Welcome, Shobha Mohan. Please go ahead. Shobha Mohan,
thank you, Kamalji. It was amazing. It was amazing listening to all the stalwarts and the amount of work that's been going in to see how we can all get over the pandemic. I'll begin by saying one of the things that was last touched upon, that is sustainability. And I think one of the things that the pandemic has taught us is if there is no destination, there is no tourism. So what is and what will be and what should be the primary objective of tourism is that the destination retains its integrity. And the second is that the community has to benefit from every tourism initiative. So it has been, I think it has been my luck and my God sent that when I started in this tourism business in 2004, the hotels that came on board Rare, which for all those who are listening in, is a small business, collecting hotels under a community with a focus towards sustainability, regenerative tourism, and transformation and mindful travel. When I began, I didn't really know where I was headed, but it almost feels like going back to those days, right? And I have taught many times, and many of you who are from the South will know, I am always thinking maybe I should have taken that job as a biology teacher somewhere. But as we began with, as the pandemic hit us as early as of end of February, what are the challenges that we faced? First of all, the invoicing completely stopped. It was just like that straight line in the hospital, in the monitors in the hospitals that you see. The second thing that what happened was, as a communication, marketing, and sales company, who do you market to, what do you market, and what do you do? With a team of about 17 people, in about 4 cities in India and in UK, you are wondering how and why you will be paying somebody who doesn't have anything to do. The third, of course, is that we all needed a quick strategy to pivot, imagining that travel is going to be coming back at some point very soon. Then we wondered, what do we do with our skills, which were largely focused on selling, on marketing and communications. And most importantly, how, when we started to let go of some people, which we had to in the office in Delhi, we were wondering how we can organize multi-skilling so that a product person can also do marketing and can do sales and also can go on to the social media and present us to a worldwide audience. So in the pandemic world, for all those young entrepreneurs listening in, what do I think are your strengths? First of all, you have a millennial mindset. Many of us, I am in my early 50s, I do not know what a millennial is thinking like. And going forward, travel is going to see a lot of millennial travel. In fact, there is a lot of millennial travel that is happening. While we had perseverance, the younger generation, you all have, some people call it the attention deficit disorder. I think it will serve you well, because this attention deficit will ensure that you will tell shorter and and sharper stories. Technology will always be your strength. Y'all came on board. Y'all came on board. I mean, y'all came into this world as if y'all had a wireless wired around your head with an internet sign over your head. And the last but not the least, I think y'all are able to look at sustainability and wanting to have a better world for yourself and for the future generation. So let me tell you what the opportunities are looking for all of you. Let me tell you, please look at places where no one else is looking, and please look at small businesses. Look at your own towns, villages, small towns. Try and create small businesses that you can bring in your local communities and create job opportunities. This will ensure that people are not moving into large towns, and that migrant issue that we had will not occur again. Right? You'll be creating jobs for small community people anywhere you are in the country. Look at areas in India which is not being looked at. I was recently in Jharkhand, and I can tell you there is a mine of wonderful places just waiting out there to be explored. People are not looking at insurance. I think that is a great opportunity for all of you. In this pandemic times, I have struggled with having to pay back and refund payments. We ran campaigns, but we had to give back a lot of money to people. And in an industry where money flow is always one way, and we used to look at a lot of credits. Insurances are going to be a great opportunity, and travel insurance in India still hasn't seen its zenith. Marketing skills training, great. Millennial marketing and the hyper millennial marketing is something that you should be looking at, which I think would be a great idea. Finance in the travel industry, I was amazed how many large travel companies let go of their people and started to cut down salaries right at the beginning of the pandemic. I mean, nobody knew where it went, where it is going to go, but way back in March, people started cutting down pays and also started to let people go. So you might want to start looking at finance, and also crisis management is another opportunity for all of y'all. Staying in small towns, becoming independent hoteliers, like I also said, is a great and a very, very creative opportunity, and it also allows you to run small sustainable businesses. I would like to end this by telling you that there are two other areas where you should be really looking at, is how you can get people to be interested in what you're doing. As many interests that you have, in fact, my father used to call me a jack of all trades. In this day and age, as many interests you have, that many ideas for travel that you can propagate, and that many travel companies, that many different travel experiences you can create for people to travel. And as Suman sir rightly said, creating compelling stories for experiences for people to travel to is going to stand you in great stead. So RARE actually markets over 78 hotels in different parts of the country, in 4 countries, including India, Nepal, Bhutan, and Sri Lanka. These are all owner-run hotels in small off the beaten track locations. This is a model that you should all be looking at. Try opening a hotel, a small boutique hotel in the outskirts of a place like, say, Visakhapatnam or Hyderabad, where the domestic market can easily travel, not only to ensure that they have a great experience, but also that they can come back from a travel experience transformed, because each of these hotels have sustainability in the core of their operations. They support local businesses, they support local crafts, they work towards great new ideas on how they'll deal with their plastic consumption, what they would do with, and what they would do with their water, how they would preserve their heritage and cultural and social heritage, and of course the wildlife conservation. So to end, I would say that the pandemic, for many it be a challenge. For me it has been a challenge too, but I also thought this was a time, it was a great opportunity to relearn what I have learned, and for people who are starting off new, there's a huge amount of opportunities waiting for you. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Shoba. Thank you very much. And it is really, you touched upon almost each and every subject related to entrepreneurship development for the younger generations in exploring the small business areas, small business areas in the localities, and the crisis management and the marketing. I'm sure the viewers listening to you will take cue from you. So we can go for Q&A session now. Can we go for a Q&A session? Because we have 3 to 4 more minutes to go.
Yes, Kamalji, we can go. There were a few questions that has been shared with you. Yeah.
I think Gloria has a question. Gloria has a question.
There was a question for Gloria and there was a question for Ritesh as well.
Can you read out?
Yeah. So there's a question from audience. Can Gloria talk a bit about what is the predicted minimum growth expected in 2021 travel and tourism industry?
Yes, Gloria.
Yes, that is a great question. We are analyzing the numbers as we speak with Oxford Economics and different players that we have. What we see is the recovery is going to be different by region and by country, depending on the support that the governments have provided to the private sector, as it was mentioned before. In some cases, they recover faster. We anticipate that in the first half of the year, we're not going to see the recovery in most of the markets, but the second half is going to be a bounce back. It's very hard to tell, but we hope that it's going to help us to be, by the end of 21, very similar to where we were at some point in 2019. But it's hard to tell right now. We are trying to calculate that number. As soon as we have it, we'll share with Kamal so that he can share with the audience. In a couple of weeks, we should have that number.
Ritesh has a question.
Thanks, Gloria. Yeah. So there's another question for Ritesh. Can Ritesh touch upon how more standardization can be brought into the homestays and holiday homes segment to reduce travel fear, keeping in mind the COVID situation?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. And, at this point of time, if we see in India or across the world, holiday homes and homestays are increasingly the first choice for customers, because people get a kitchen, a lobby, no minimal lobby space, where people are checking in and checking out, a lot of them common areas and so on. So there is a huge amount of consumer demand that is moving towards holiday homes and homestays. In order to ensure that the quality can be best maintained, I think there are 4 to 5 things that I'll try to shorten it, maybe 1 or 2 top things because of time. The first is, I think, training of the home owner or the home manager is very critical, because a lot of times the expectation of quality of the service or the quality of infrastructure is different from what the consumer has. And the second is social, reputation of the home, which is being able to make sure that you can get feedback, reviews, and ratings from other people who have stayed there. I think a combination of these, combined with consumer expecting only authentic experiences rather than a hotel-like service, I think a combination of these 3 things is what will hopefully drive further rise of holiday homes and homestays in our country.
So, any other question? Any other question?
Right now, I could able to the things which I have posted. I'll just quickly check if Pallavi has posted something. Yeah, I think so. We have this.
So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. I must firstly, I must thank Gloria, Mr. Suman Billa, Shoba Mohan, and Ritesh Agarwal for participating in this global summit. I also thank Mr. Shashidhar, Mr. Sridhar Reddy, Thai Global Summit Head, who is the president of Thai Global Summit 2020, for giving all of us this opportunity to participate and speak on various aspects of revival of tourism sector globally. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
rightly remarked by the last session, we human beings are social animals and we do need to go out there and travel. So I hope that the travel and tourism industry really cope up very soon. And now coming up next is another great session, and moderating this session is going to be Mr. Devdeep Sen Gupta. He is in conversation with Neelam Dhawan, and they are talking about making a B2B startup tick and click. Over to you, Mr. Devdeep.
Thank you. Thank you.
Welcome.
Neelam, it's always a pleasure to interact with you. And
Thank you.
as I've been saying, I've been looking forward to this opportunity to ask you some questions because it's always been the other way around.
Yes.
So Neelam, today's session is pretty interesting. It is about B2B startups, what makes them click, what makes them grow. Given your vast experience in the corporate, running large multinationals for most of your career, also being on board of both Indian and global companies, as well as being a mentor to many startups. My question to you is, the startup community, especially B2B startup in India, is the most exciting place today. Right. Today, if you look at, it is projected that while it contributes to today's Indian B2B startups, contributes to less than 1% of the global B2B SaaS, but over the next decade or so, it will possibly contribute about 10%. So it is obviously attracting many new ideas, many investors, and many opportunities. But at the same point of time, in your mind, what are the top 3 challenges for Indian startups to attain global scale?
So Devdeep, thanks for that question, and it's a real good kickoff because I've been closely working with some startups for the last 3 years, and I'm on the board of Yatra, which I still think we are in the startup mode, and I'm on the board of Skylo Technologies, which is very new in satellite communication. Plus, I mentor quite a few SaaS companies. What I find is there are 3 things which we all struggle with. The first thing is talent. Getting the right talent to work with you is very difficult. Everybody wants to work with an established company, and given that there is a failure rate of startups, people are choosy and they don't look at their career very, very easily. The second challenge which most entrepreneurs face is the capital. Getting the right investments is extremely difficult, especially when you are at the idea stage and you need the seed money to start the business. It's a very difficult sell because we are now become very suspicious of will this succeed or not, and hence investors are evaluating and re-evaluating, and getting capital easily is not easy anymore, and I hope it will ease out. The last thing is how quickly can you launch the technology platform or the solution you are working on, because time is money. The more time you take, somebody else will copy your idea. More time you take, your investors will start asking questions on when you will get returns. So there is such a pressure in startups to launch very quickly their products, and couple it with talent, couple it with investment, you really have a hotbed in the startup community.
No, I think very succinctly put, Neelam. I think you've captured the three critical essence of it. One is obviously the entire idea of the product or the solution, what you call as a product market fit. That's number one. Number two, how do you obviously get investors to believe in you, right? And more importantly, how do you get talent to come and join you, to come and work for you, and so that they can help you achieve your growth objective. So I think it's very well captured. So maybe I'll start off with the talent aspect of it, because that's the most important aspect, to start off with. Because hiring the first employee, if I'm a early stage startup, hiring the first employee, or maybe hiring the 10th employee becomes that much more difficult or simple, depending upon some of the other factors. So what's your advice to, I would say, to founders and to startups when they go about attracting talent? And as you rightly said, while in the Western world today there is a culture of people taking risks and joining startups. But in India, people rather want to have well-established careers in established companies. So how do you break that? How do you break that mold, and how do you attract talent?
I think till the first 100 or first 50 employees at least, it is a big challenge because the word of mouth has not spread about the work you're doing. The chief talent manager or the person who has to go and talk to and interview people and select candidates is the entrepreneur himself, because he or she knows the what they want to achieve, what is the vision for that company, and they are the best to articulate the direction the company will take. And that's when I feel they are the only ones who can convince at least the first 10, 20 employees. So until you get these 15, 20 people who are like-minded like you, who want to work and believe in your focus area or your solution, then then it builds up. But getting the first 20 is so difficult, so difficult. We are interviewing, maybe you'll interview 10 and one may, I don't think even 10% join of what we interview, but that's how it is currently. And this is the irony. Startups means you need very good quality talent who will be independently work and contribute. They're going to lay the foundation of that company, and it is tough to get them. Yeah, so the promoter has to do the first few recruitments himself, herself.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I guess they become I think, the chief talent officer in some sense, as you rightly said, because it is about establishing the brand. It is about, building the credibility with people as much as important to customers. And coming to the topic of customers and clients, uh, you know, uh, I guess there are two aspects of the startups. It is good to get, as a B2B startup, it is good to get some early customers in friends and family. But how do you crack open big accounts? That becomes one of the key aspects for a startup. And given your experience, Neelam, of managing large corporations, as well as being partner, as well as being advisor, how does these startups go about being able to get beyond friends and family clients?
Let's look at the startup community. It's in two big areas. Somebody once told me in India only two areas are happening: food and technology.
True.
So food is B2C. Everybody will order for food, and you see cloud kitchens and whatnot coming up. So that is one area. The other area is the I would say fintech area is very big, and plus e-tailing is big. E-tailing again goes B2C. So B2B is fintech, it is travel, it is getting tools in front of the customer, and SaaS solutions. Now, enterprises already have an IT or a environment running. They have their processes defined, they have their environment running. And you come in as a startup, they'll say, I don't know whether it will fit into my environment. For a small solution, I'm not going to change my big engine. So they will inevitably ask you to do POCs. Now, proof of concepts is a very expensive proposition because you show the solution, you make it work in their environment, and sometimes they'll say make it work for a month before we will take a decision. But there's no way out. The customer wants to see the product and we have a feeling it is stable. If it is not stable, then they won't use it. So they will want you to use it. If you're in SaaS, the first problem is, even if you want to give it free, people don't use it. It just lies on their shelf and they won't use it.
True.
So getting them to adopt and look at and do a POC is important. And then if it works well, they will look at going forward with you. Maybe you have to use your relatives and friends and acquaintances who know you and trust what you can bring to the table to experiment initially. Once you have 2 or 3 testimonials, I think then it becomes a little bit easier. You have users whom you can talk about to other customers. But corporate is very suspicious. They have seen many startups in the last decade come in and then fizzle out, and they feel, oh, I'll be left without a solution. and hence they don't use it as often. So building that trust is very critical for us to do it.
Absolutely, I think you're spot on, Neelam, because it is for it's really hard work to crack open a large corporate, but at the same point of time, once you make it successful, it works as a multiplier effect for your customer acquisition strategy. In fact, coming to that, I know back in your days in HP, you had put a lot of focus on partnership, building partnerships. Right, because I've seen a lot of startup founders often struggle between, building up a robust ecosystem and trusting on partners and sharing a pie of the revenue with them, vis-a-vis doing it everything themselves. So, what role do you think, ecosystem or partnerships plays for a startup, and what stage of it?
For me, partnerships are very critical. All my life, I felt you can't reach every customer, you can't reach every market, you can't reach every geography. So you need alliances and partners to help you go and work on it. Now, the problem is if you go after the big names of partnerships, they may not have the bandwidth to develop those focus on your product, right? So they already have established products, they don't want to do it. So you have to find like-minded companies who are willing to invest time and resources to build a business model around your product. And this is especially if you are looking at a SaaS offering. Now, in one of the companies which I am working with, they went and they realized that they are working on a product which will be on every boat, on every railway bogie, and so on and so forth. They realize that they're a startup, they can't service and support each and every boat which exists, fisheries and other boats and so on and so forth. So in that kind of a situation, you do need alliances and partnerships, but they are looking at, can it be self-deployed? And many of the SaaS solutions today are something which you can deploy or install on your own. Easily. So we are learning from the Apple and the Samsung stores, the Apple Store and the Samsung Store, to how you download an app, you run it yourself. And many of the startups are motivated to follow that model. Somewhere it works, somewhere you need alliances and partnerships to go and pitch to the customers, but it plays a very important role. You don't know the application by industry also. How auto sector will use it is very different, how banking sector will use something, and you need associations to work on this. Yeah. No, but you're right. Big companies will not come to you. You need to focus on the smaller
ecosystem. Yeah, ecosystem. Yeah, because you're so right. Because there's also a stage for that. Because if you go too early to the ecosystem, it might, if your product is not is not fully robust or ready, it might create more problems from a customer support or a product support perspective. When you go, open it up to ecosystem. So there's this right balance to strike. So one of the expectation, Neelam, I'm sure, being on boards and mentors to startups, you would have, along with other investors or with the investment community, is to drive triple-digit growth. Right. So because that's I would say that's a minimum expectation. Now, coming to making choices for startups. Should we invest into expansion into the domestic market? Should we go international? Is always a choice between a rock and a hard place, right? And there are a few success stories of companies, Indian B2B SaaS companies, which has gone global and have done really well. There are also many stories where companies have not been so successful. Maybe they went too early. So what's your advice? When should one look at geographical expansion? Is it go straight to west? There is this thing especially in the B2B SaaS side of it. One says that, look, you cannot become $1 billion company by being only in India. you got to go outside India. Maybe you have to go to North America. There's other thought process which says there is enough market in India, in GCC, in Asia, maybe Southeast Asia. So what's been what's your advice? What's the right model?
So it depends. You look at Zerodha. Zerodha has come up with a solution which fits the existing market. He's a disruptor in the share market, so to speak. And he found a niche, he found a gap. Now Zerodha going elsewhere may not be feasible, but he's got enough business which he can do in India and more. And then he can modify and have offerings for other countries. To have an offering which fits India and another country at the same time is not easy because of the currency changes. Sometimes it's a language change, the tax structures are different. So building the billing module for it also is a different solution required in every country. I sometimes feel if you have launched in Bangalore, it may not sell in New Delhi, and you need to have an understanding of that market before you move from Bangalore or Hyderabad to New Delhi or Mumbai. So same is true with geographies. What I feel is phase one, and this is my personal way of thinking, phase one, do specialize in one geography, get your footprint, you test, understand, and have your product fully made out, so to speak. Then look at another geography. And before you decide, is it going to be Indonesia, Vietnam, US, or Australia, you must have a deep understanding as to why your product or solution will succeed in that market. So do that homework before you just suddenly go, because you may go ahead, appoint a distributor or a dealer or open an office, whichever three you are going to do. And then you realize the product is a no fit in that market. You would have spent money which you shouldn't have. So doing which geography next? So my recommendation is go in a phase manner. Do deep dive in one, make it work, see the product is stable, or the solution is something which market has started picking up. Study the next market. You can do it parallelly. See what changes you need to make in the product and solution, and then decide to launch. Otherwise, we'll be very tiny in India, very tiny elsewhere, and it will be irrelevant.
So I guess if I summarize, your recommendation is first, obviously, do your product market fit, gain some critical mass before before you want to scale beyond the geographies, whether it's a regional geography, whether it is a different geography, because in terms of localization, whether it is language, whether it is currency, or even business practices may differ quite a lot. So I guess that's what your recommendation is. And coming to the expansion, typically I'll possibly put on the investor hat. Investors basically look at what's the product market fit and what is the total addressable market. Right. They look at the TAM, and basis the TAM, they will decide that, look, one of the thought process would be the TAM is not big enough just to play in one geography, so you should expand. Now, in theory, it may be a good, I would say, a good decision. But when it comes to the execution, that's where the devil lies in the details. And that's where.
And also, how much investment can you afford? Because two markets will need brand creation, marketing, getting leads, having few people to service that market. So do you have the resources? If you have, you've done a plan, why not do it? Also, there are two kinds of investors. Some investors who are saying, let's look at long-term returns. There'll be a big bang return in the long term. And some who are saying short-term returns. I don't mind getting less returns, but I need it very quickly. So it also depends on which kind of an investor has invested in your company.
That's true. That's true. And also, as a founder, when you're raising your capital, are you raising your capital at the seed stage? Or are you raising your capital at the Series A? Your pressure point will also depend upon that, because the investors would also look at exit, the exit period that way. So, in fact, very interesting. So maybe a follow-on question, and especially for founders and startup. Again, given your vantage point, Neelam, most of the time founders are in the conundrum of balancing their focus between managing investors managing clients, and managing talent. So, how do you strike the right balance?
And I'll add a fourth dimension, also managing the product readiness. They are the
Of
ones who
course.
are laying the direction and
Yeah.
they're putting it on. So I think it's somewhere you have to prioritize. Maybe you have to do all four. You're the chief talent officer, you're the CEO, you're the chief finance officer going and getting money in, and you are the head of R&D to get the product developed. And believe me, it is extremely difficult to get the balance. And I have seen some people just get sucked into the technical issues and then they don't have focus on customers. And as a startup, customers expect to meet the promoter
Of course.
rather than meet somebody
Yeah.
you've hired initially and to open the doors. So it's quite a difficult role. I would say it's more than 24-hour role for anyone who starts a new company in this country. And then you have regulations and you have to have approvals and GST and tax and all that to be done too before you can start booking orders and do business. So I don't know what's the right thing, but step one is to have the right team. That's the number one team. And then step two is to get the product and the roadmap of the product and solutions defined and have a group of people who will then build on it. You can't be Bill Gates and do coding all by yourself, right? And he could do it, but I don't think we all can do it.
Yeah.
So you need to have that as a team. And then once you are at a stage of readiness, then you need to look at customers. And I tell you, all four, you can't delegate. It is so difficult a role that you just can't say, okay, I'm not going to look for investors. Sorry, you won't get the investors then. So it's all four which the promoter has to prioritize at different stage of his company.
No, you're so right. And in fact, yeah, there are four dimensions: product, people, customer, investors, and you cannot prioritize. You have to almost be a superhuman to be able to manage that.
Yeah.
And that's where maybe my question to you, Neelam, is that's where role of board advisors many a times, mentors, coaches comes in a lot, right? So since you're always you're a board advisor as well as a mentor and a coach to many of them. So how do you is there anything specific you tell them, you guide them, you coach them about?
Yeah, so first sometimes I wonder how did they reach out to me. So they do reach out, and they'll sometimes I don't know them, and they'll say so and so told me when I spoke to him or her, and that we need someone to guide and have communicate with us. So it comes through introduction. So how do you find a mentor and a coach? First, many startups don't even know how do I find a mentor and coach, and I have seen people reach out to Premji, to even Mr. Ratan Tata and say, and those people sometimes, if they like your idea, do reach out to you. So you are seeing very senior people, reach out and do the conversations with startup and mentor them also. So that is one on how you contact, people and ask them. The second thing is when the challenges which come, everybody comes and says, so how do I make a pitch for investment? I think that's a very big gap. Just like you talked about total addressable market, just thinking through a business plan is where I find we need to focus on. If the pitch is made right, I think one of the battles which is to get investment is right. So the question that everyone should have, why should this investor invest in my business? Or why should this person join my company? Or why should this customer buy my product? And you have to have a full understanding and a plan. I think we just approach, and when I look at the plan, sometimes I feel this is not a plan you and I can invest in, and perhaps it will not give the returns the crowd is looking at. And I think it's important. Now, you can't just pitch generically, you can't just say, here is a product I can sell to telecom, banking, manufacturing, and so on. It has to fit into a need in that sector. So that's another aspect. And I find if you're not clear on these things, you don't meet success. And that is important to guide. Making a strong business plan, making a strong investment plan, I think is very critical for them. And that's what I guide them on. Most of the time, our discussions are around this.
Yeah, that's so very true, because most of the time people, maybe as you rightly said, the founder could be technical in nature, and they may need some help on putting up a business plan, which can be sold to the investors, and which is a feasible one, or to clients and things like that. And that becomes one of the most essential coaching. Or even how do you build a team, how do you build a sales organization, how do you build a customer support organization, all of those, organization building and all that becomes a very, very important aspect.
Actually, Deep, you've raised a very important point. I don't see startups thinking about, are they creating a company for longevity? Are they creating an organization which will be there for 10 years, 15 years, 20 years? And that thinking has to come in, because you can't just say 3 years from now, I'm going to sell the business and move on to a new idea. Maybe that's your plan. But if the investors hear that, they're not going to invest in you. So think long term hasn't happened in many companies.
Yeah, actually, everybody's looking at still, I think it's a bit of a gold rush kind of a thing. And I think, rightly or wrongly, serial entrepreneurs are eulogized more than successful, sustainable businesses. So I guess some of these also got to do with the investors, I would say, mindset, and the kind, as you rightly said, the type of invested. Are we looking for a shorter time frame versus a longer time frame? So, my final question to you is, you have been throughout your career, throughout your professional career, you have been an operating leader, right? You have built teams, you have scaled organization, you have done so many things, right? Not just in India, across Asia Pacific as well. And when you're on as an advisor, right, what is the kind of feeling or sense you get out of it? Because you know what I mean. So you would say, rather, I just might as well get it done myself.
So it's so true. Initially, I used to say, why is it taking so long? It can just get done. Why am I trying to convince someone to do in a particular way? I know it will work. So that, I know it all was a lot.
Right.
And then, so initially, it took me quite some time. But now, most of the time, I sit with my hands under my leg, under my bum, on my seat, and say, I'm not going to do it. You have to do it. And I think I've learned in the last 2 years when I took on these roles is I need to ask questions which make the entrepreneur think and think of it as it was his decision and outcome rather than giving him a solution. That works better. If you think of an answer to a question put to you, you know that's the right answer, and you go ahead and execute it. So execution is better than saying, do this, is to say, what do you think will work in this situation? And if they give the right answer, you say, yeah, let's do it. And it gets executed.
It's very interesting because you mentioned that, because obviously knowing you would rather, get it done and then, than telling somebody to do it repeatedly. So,
yeah.
but
I see a question from the audience, Deep.
Okay.
It says, how do I enforce my intellectual property and stop others from entering in the sector with similar solutions? Yeah. I think this is a very important question, and intellectual property rights in our country are really cumbersome. It takes time to get intellectual property, but you need to ensure you register it, and otherwise you can't protect it. But let's assume an idea you got, 100 other people got it. The speed of execution is far important than anything else. The speed at which you bring out the product, the speed at which you are able to go ahead and do it. It's before somebody can say, Jack Robinson, you should have done it. That kind of a speed is needed in startups. You don't have luxury of time. Somebody can copy your idea very soon. Deep, what do you feel?
Yeah, I totally agree, because I think what you said is absolutely this thing. The most important point is the speed of execution, because how do you build your barriers to entry for your competitors is through your customer acquisition, is through your referenceability, uniqueness of idea beyond a point doesn't exist in today's world,
Hmm.
right? It is how do you build up scale quickly, and obviously how do you put some guardrails, whether in terms of registering it, whether in terms of creating some kind of a I would say entry barrier for your competitors. You're absolutely spot on. But I think
The
speed of
next
execution.
question is for
Uh,
you. As
okay.
I'm going to ask you this. As a B2B startup founder, I have found investor interest very difficult to capture. Is there any advice for me? How do I compete with large companies as a B2B startup, earning the trust of first market? Yeah, that we
Yeah.
discussed already. So how do you get the investors to look at a startup?
Yeah, I think that's a very interesting question. So let me, I think my philosophy is a bit different. My philosophy is a B2B SaaS. Unlike in a B2C where you have to, in a way, almost think through the product design before you take it to the market. In the B2B SaaS side of it, if you have customer access, you can build your minimum viable product along with the customer. Or you can also, if you have a services model, you can pivot it to a platform model, right? So there are multiple ways of creating a B2B SaaS product, either with customers or through, if you have a services model, you can pivot it to a platform model. So these are few ways. And if you have the first few paying customers, investors will follow you instead of you following investors. So that's one way of doing it, and that's a beauty in a B2B SaaS startup. So that's how I would say as
I'll also say one thing to you.
yeah,
Now building a trust of a customer is actually no different in a big company or a small company.
that's right.
You have to make the product or solution or SaaS work. If it works well, the customer then feels, yes, it's a good product, it is delivering the results it has been providing. Today we find that the startups are so keen to launch their product, it's not ready, it doesn't work, and
Yes.
you've lost the customer even before you've started if in day one it just doesn't get installed and working well. So that is one. If you can make, and I can tell you there have been problems, but if you have genuinely shown interest to solve the problems and you've been interacting, you will find that your customers will stay with you for life. So A, don't get into a rush to sell incomplete solution and product, and B, if things go wrong, please take ownership of it and fix it, because if you run away,